Have you ever felt that your entire life changed in just a single second? Not a minute. Not a day. But one moment. One choice. One hit. One fall. That was my moment. I was on the field. The lights were bright. The crowd was screaming my name. Every drop of sweat I had ever shed. It all led to this. And then. It happened. A sharp twist. A sudden pain. My legs stopped. My heart dropped. I was frozen. I tried to stand. But nothing moved. I fell to the ground. Not just physically. But mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Rushed to the hospital. Bright lights. White coats. Cold silence. The doctor looked me in the eye. And said words that crushed me. You may never walk the same again. It was over. All of it. The training. The dreams. The vision I carried since I was a child. Gone. I went home. Empty. Broken. Angry. Lost. I locked myself away. Blamed everyone. Blamed life. Blamed God. Why me? Why now? But then. Something shifted. One night. As I stared at the ceiling. Tears in my eyes. Regret in my chest. A voice whispered. Soft. Steady. Strong. It said. This isn't where it ends. This is where it begins. And that was my hook. Because that voice wasn't from the outside. It was mine. That moment, when I chose not to stay broken, was the beginning of my real journey. I got up. Slowly. Painfully. But I got up. Not as the athlete. Not as the star. But as the man who had nothing to prove. And everything to rebuild. The world may have taken my dream. But it couldn't take my will. I promised myself. If I can't play the game, I'll inspire those who do. If I can't run the race, I'll light the path for others. If I can't be the champion, I'll create them. Because sometimes, our biggest fall is life's way of showing us a higher purpose. And today, I stand here, not as a survivor, but as a fighter. A speaker. A mentor. My story isn't over. It just changed direction. And the next chapter starts now. There are moments in life when everything seems stable, until it isn't. Inky was rising. A star in the making. Every practice, every rep, every drill, he gave it his all. He wasn't just playing for the NFL dream. He was playing for his family. For that cramped home where dreams were whispered, but never lived. For his mother who held the weight of the world on her shoulders. Every sprint felt like a sprint toward freedom. And then, in one game, one hit, everything changed. A routine tackle. Just another play. But when he hit the ground, something was wrong. He tried to stand. Nothing. His right arm, paralyzed. His body, shaken. The stadium fell silent, but inside, Inky was screaming. The diagnosis? A life-altering nerve injury. No more football. No more NFL. Years of training, all leading to this. A dead end? No. Not for Inky. Pain tried to speak louder. But purpose roared. He lay in that hospital bed, tubes and silence surrounding him, and chose not to drown in pity. He chose not to blame life, fate, or even the game. He asked a different question. What now? What do I do with the gift that remains? Because even if one arm failed him, his heart still beat with the same fire. That moment, the breaking, was also the beginning. He started to speak. At first, just to small groups. His story, not one of loss, but of rising. Of how life doesn't always go as planned, but it always gives you a choice. And that choice is what defines you. The world saw a man who lost everything. But Inky became the man who showed how to live with purpose, even when your plan is broken. He wasn't just inspiring, he was igniting something in others. The setback didn't end him. It revealed him. The crowd sees the outcome. But only you know the process. Inky Johnson never saw his injury as a finish line. He saw it as a starting point, of a greater calling. Most people would have given up. Slipped into the background. But Inky? He stood up. With one working arm, he carried a message the world needed to hear. Because pain is universal. But how you respond, that's what makes you unforgettable. He learned to live in a new body. But with an old mindset, the relentless one. The mindset that says, even if I can't control what happened, I will control how I respond to it. Inky began traveling. Speaking. Not about football, but about life. About how every person has two choices, to become bitter, or to become better. And he chose better, every single day. He told people the truth. That sometimes, life breaks your plan, to build your purpose. His voice wasn't loud, but it was clear. Full of conviction. Because he wasn't just talking theory. He was living proof. In every auditorium, every classroom, every stage, his presence lit fires. People cried. People stood. People believed again, because someone stood before them, not perfect, not whole, but real. Transparent. Brave. He wasn't trying to impress. He was trying to impact. And his message? It didn't rely on motivational clichés. It came from scars. From nights he couldn't sleep. From moments he doubted everything. But still, he got up. He reminded people, you don't need everything to start. You just need the will to move forward. One arm. Full heart. Clear mind. That's what made Inky unstoppable. He turned a tragedy into a testimony. A breakdown into a breakthrough. And slowly, the world began to see, not the athlete that never made the NFL, but the warrior who redefined success. There comes a moment when you realize, it was never about the setback. It was always about the story you'd write after it. Inky Johnson didn't get to choose what happened to him, but he chose how to see it. And that made all the difference. He didn't sit in sorrow. He sat in stillness. And in that quiet space, he found purpose. He realized pain wasn't punishment. It was preparation. A call to rise above comfort, and enter character. Most people ask, why me? Inky started asking, what now? He stopped looking at what he lost, and started focusing on what he could give. Because sometimes, your greatest gift comes wrapped in your greatest trial. Perspective changes everything. It turns obstacles into opportunities. Wounds into wisdom. Setbacks into setups. Inky understood that people weren't inspired by perfection, they were moved by authenticity. His brokenness became his power. Because he wasn't hiding behind motivation. He was standing in truth. He didn't speak to impress a crowd, he spoke to awaken hearts. And the more he gave, the more he healed. See, Inky never returned to the football field, but he stepped onto bigger stages. His jersey may have stayed still, but his voice traveled the world. Because when you live with perspective, you stop chasing applause, and start chasing alignment. He began speaking in prisons. In schools. In locker rooms. In corporations. His message didn't care about your title, it cared about your truth. He reminded people, you're not what happened to you. You're what you choose to become after it. And the world needed that reminder. Because we're all broken in some way. But broken crayons still color. And Inky Johnson, he colored with courage. That's the shift. That's the power. That's the perspective. Greatness isn't built when the cameras are on. It's built when no one is watching. After his injury, Inky Johnson didn't wake up to cheers anymore. No crowd. No lights. Just silence. And that's where he found something even louder than applause, his own purpose. He would wake up before the sun, not for practice, but for prayer. For preparation. For something far deeper than football. Because when life strips away what you thought you were, it reveals who you really are. While others asked, "What now?" with fear, Inky answered, "Now I rise." He studied, read, wrote, and trained, not his body, but his character. The world saw a man with a paralyzed arm. But Inky saw a calling with no limits. He started sharpening his words the way he once sharpened his plays. Every sentence became a tool. Every message, a mission. He wasn't trying to inspire people. He was trying to ignite something inside them. Because Inky knew. You don't need a platform to change lives, you need a purpose. And so, in those quiet mornings and empty rooms, he was becoming something stronger than an athlete, he was becoming a voice. Not a motivational speaker, but a life speaker. A man who spoke from scars, not scripts. From struggle, not strategy. People listened, not because he was famous, but because he was real. And real will always reach the heart faster than hype. He kept showing up. One school. One team. One soul at a time. Never chasing attention, always chasing intention. Because Inky understood this truth. Your struggle isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning of someone else's breakthrough. And in showing up for others, he kept showing up for himself. Some people run from pain. Inky Johnson. He learned to walk with it. He didn't ask for a second chance at football. He asked for strength to serve a higher purpose. Because pain didn't just paralyze his arm, it awakened his soul. He stopped asking, "Why me?" and started asking, "What now?" Every hospital visit, every tough night, every silent cry, it was shaping him, carving something deeper than strength. It was carving conviction. You see, pain can do two things. It can crush you, or it can craft you. And Inky chose the second. He started to understand, his setback wasn't punishment. It was preparation. For stages he hadn't stepped on yet. For people he hadn't met yet. For hearts that needed healing. Because what people remember about you, isn't what you went through. It's how you carried it. He stood up not to prove anything, but to become everything he was meant to be. There were days when his arm ached. When the mirror reminded him of everything he'd lost. But instead of breaking, he bowed his head. And whispered to himself. I still have breath. That means I still have purpose. His pain became a message. Not of tragedy, but of transformation. And that message became his mission. Every time he stood on a stage, he wasn't speaking for applause. He was speaking for that one person sitting in the dark. Thinking they're not enough. Thinking their story is over. And in that moment, Inky's voice became a light. Because when you've survived the fire, you don't just tell people there's hope. You are the hope. They once cheered for him because he could hit hard on the field. Now they listen, because life hit him harder. Inky Johnson didn't chase the spotlight after the injury. He chased impact. While the world applauds the trophies, the medals, the highlight reels, Inky learned to applaud resilience. He wasn't interested in being remembered as a football star. He wanted to be remembered as someone who never quit on life. Even when life quit on him. You see, anyone can be impressive on their best day. But inspiration? That's built on your worst days, and how you rise anyway. Inky walked away from fame not because he failed, but because he found something deeper. A calling. He became obsessed, not with success, but with service. He spoke in schools, locker rooms, churches, anywhere a voice was needed. And he didn't bring a script. He brought his story. Real. Raw. Relentless. He told them. Life won't always go as planned. But your pain doesn't cancel your purpose. And people listened. Not because he had a perfect life, but because he had the courage to live fully despite an imperfect one. He wasn't speaking for likes. He wasn't preaching to trend. He was pouring from a place of purpose. Because when life shifts your path, your mission doesn't end. It evolves. And the moment he embraced that, he became more powerful than ever before. People didn't see a man who lost his dream. They saw a man who became the dream. For anyone who's ever been knocked down, broken, forgotten, and still chose to get back up. Inky Johnson didn't ask for attention. He earned something better, respect. Not just for what he did, but for who he became. They say life is short. But legacy, that lasts. Inky Johnson didn't plan to be a speaker. He didn't ask to be a symbol of strength. He simply lived with intention, every single day. No excuses. No shortcuts. Only purpose. He turned pain into power. Loss into leadership. And tragedy into testimony. While others were counting wins and losses, Inky was counting lessons. Because what he lost on the field, he gained tenfold in life. Courage. Character. Clarity. He taught us that adversity doesn't break you. It builds you. It tests your values. And reveals your truth. Inky didn't speak to impress. He spoke to impact. People came to hear a former athlete. They left remembering a warrior of mindset. He reminded every listener. You're not defined by your success, or your struggles. You're defined by how you respond when it all falls apart. And when you've stared down the storm. And still stood tall. That's when the world listens. Because Inky didn't just survive. He served. He served people with his story. His heart. His belief that one moment, one choice, can rewrite your life. No playbook. No spotlight. Just discipline. Vision. Faith. And that brings us to the lesson, the truth hidden in his journey. The most powerful thing you can ever become, is someone who refuses to give up. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. You might not be able to choose what happens to you, but you always choose what happens within you. So let the world doubt. Let the path be hard. But don't ever let go of that fire inside you. Inky Johnson's legacy isn't about football. It's not even about success. It's about how you show up. When life gives you every reason not to.